I want to welcome you to this lesson. What we'll be doing in this lesson is that I'll be taking a very good look at a concept in literature known as dramatic techniques, right? Dramatic techniques refers to the devices that help the playwright to pass across their message. Who is a playwright? A playwright is someone who writes play or drama, right? And dramatist is somebody who both writes and acts his plays, right? So, those are the differences between both concepts. But what we'll be looking at in this lesson is to be looking at the examples of dramatic techniques and what they can mean. So let's begin our conversation from um, anagnorisis. Anagno, anagnorisis. This is a very interesting concept. Anagnorisis refers to a dramatic technique where a writer discovers something, right? So it's a point of discovery in a literary work. That point in drama where a writer discovers something, right? Like in the play The Marriage of Anansewa by Efwa Sutherland, the point where Anansewa discovers that she is the object of interest, right, in the letters that Ananse was dictating, that point is what we refer to as anagnorisis. Another one is what we call catharsis. Catharsis refers to the purgation of emotion. Another way to put that is when there is a positive outcome to a negative expectation. So we are expecting something bad to happen. In place of that bad experience, we now have something good happening. We call that catharsis. We have quite a number of that. We have another called an aside. An aside is a dramatic technique where a character is speaking to the audience or reader, not necessarily the characters on stage. So what the character says is not meant or it's not even heard by other characters, but it is read or heard by the audience or readers. Another one is soliloquy. So we have soliloquy. Soliloquy is a dramatic technique where a character speaks to himself. So, the point in drama where we find characters speaking to themselves, we call that soliloquy. Another is what we refer to as the monologue. So, the monologue is a very interesting dramatic technique. It's a technique where a character is speaking to another character, but nobody's there, right? So it's like a dialogue. A character is speaking to another person, but there's nobody there. So that is what we refer to as a monologue. We also have what we refer to in drama as foreshadowing. So foreshadowing is another good example of a dramatic technique. Foreshadowing is a dramatic technique where a writer seems to where a writer preempts something that would happen in the future, right? So foreshadowing is a device or a technique where the writer preempts, so it tells us something that would happen in the future. This can be through dreams, it can be through a trance, but what happens in foreshadowing is that we see what would happen in the future. It can be the near future or it can be a remote future. Another one is what we refer to as the flashback. The flashback. The flashback happened to be an interesting dramatic technique. In flashback, the writer, through a character, goes back to something that had happened in the past. So in flashback, the character recalls a past experience which is relevant to the present. Let me recap that. I said in flashback, the character recalls a past experience. However, this past experience is relevant to the future. It's relevant to the future. We also have what we call the conflict. The conflict. The conflict is a disagreement a character has with nature, character has with God, character has with his internal environment, right? Character has with another character. So it is character versus nature, character versus God, character versus himself, character versus another character. So when that happens in literature, we call that conflict. Another one is what we call the denouement. Denouement is the falling action, right? Denouement is a point in drama where conflicts have been resolved. That point, we refer to it as denouement. So that we call it the denouement or the resolution. What happens at this point is that a conflict, right? We had explained what conflict is resolved, and there is a change in states. So it's another one, 10th. The 10th one here will now be peripeteia. Peripeteia. If there's anything to be known about dramatic techniques is that they are numerous. There are quite a number of them out there. We'll be looking at a few in this video, right? So dramatic techniques. So peripeteia is a dramatic technique a character, where a character where there's a change in fortune of a character. So peripeteia is a dramatic technique where there is a change in the fortune of a character. What does that mean? It means that the character moves from poor to rich, rich to poor, naivety to knowledge, or ignorance to knowledge, as the case may be, or the reverse. So in peripeteia, what we find is that there is a change in the state of the character. Something just changes in that character. The 11th one, let's have 15. The 11th one happens to be cast. The cast are the characters that play roles in a work of drama. Casts are the animal, human, spirit things that play roles in a work of drama. We call them casts. We also have another that we refer to in as dramatic technique as the curtain call. Remember, I said that there are quite a number of these. So there's the curtain call. The curtain call is a signal for the end of an act or a scene. So the curtain call a is an order that signals the end of an act, a scene, or a play. That's what we refer to as a curtain call. Now we have what we call the imagery. Very important. Imagery are the writer's way of creating mental pictures with words. So, with imagery, a writer is able to create mental pictures, but in this case, the writer uses words. Right? I said we should get up to 15 in this conversation. Now, we have what we know as characterization. Anyway, there are some of these techniques that we find both in drama and in prose. So characterization refers to a ploy by the writer to ascribe certain roles, qualities to a character. The reason why a character behaves the way the character behaves is what we call characterization. All of those are arbitrary. It is a writer's will or wish, right? The writer has the power to make a character behave certain ways. That is what we refer to as characterization in a dramatic piece. The last one we'll be looking at in this conversation is the dramatic irony. The dramatic irony. There's the dramatic irony. The dramatic irony occurs in drama when the readers or audience are aware of something that the characters are not aware of. It happens in drama where the readers and audience are aware of something that the characters on stage are not aware of. Techniques. Narrative techniques are techniques that are used in prose. So while dramatic techniques are techniques used in drama, we have narrative techniques used in prose, right? Okay, so there are quite a number of these, and the novelist uses these techniques to be able to achieve their goal. One of the techniques we'll be looking at is point of view. Point of view. It's a very powerful concept. This refers to the perspective from where a narrative is being told. So the point of view refers to the perspective from where a story is being told. And in prose, there are three types of point of view. We have what we refer to as the first person point of view. We have the person, second person point of view. So SP, and then we have the third person point of view. The first person point of view occurs in prose when a character in the literary work prose is telling or sharing an experience. So when a character in the prose text, right, is sharing an experience, right, or is a narrator, we refer to that as first person point of view. In books that have first person point of view, you see the use of pronouns like I, me, we, and us. A very good example of this is Invincible Man by Ralph Waldo Ellison, right? So it is written in the first person point of view. In the second person point of view, what you find is that the author addresses the character. So the dominant pronouns there is you and your. These are the dominant pronouns you find in a prose text that is written in second person point of view. A very good example of that is Jamaica Kincaid's A Small Place, right? Now, the third person point of view is that point of view that is written in such a way where the author seems to have an all-knowing persona. So the author knows everything that is going on, right? It's like God, you know. If you don't call it the third person point of view, it's also called the omniscient point of view. What you find is that there seems to be a God nature. The author sees everything going on with the characters, even their minds. So we call that the third person point of view in um, narrative techniques. Number two, we have what we call the plot. The plot. The plot refers to the sequential arrangements of events in a work of literature. The sequential arrangement of events in a work of literature. The sequential arrangement of events in a work of literature. There are basically two types of point of view of plots. We have the simple plots, and we have, or we call it the organic plots, or we have the episodic plots, and the inorganic plots. Right? It's simple because it follows a simple format, beginning, middle, end, right? It's a simple plot. But in the episodic or inorganic plots, what you find is that the narrative have subplots. So a story is told, but in the story are other smaller stories. So we call that an episodic or inorganic plot. Number three, we have what we refer to, I mentioned much earlier that there seems to be there are points where the dramatic technique and narrative technique they meet, right? There are points where they meet. So we'll be looking at, we said, point of view. We've talked about plot. Another narrative technique that we find is what we refer to as the stream of consciousness techniques. The stream of consciousness technique. The stream of consciousness technique. In a stream of consciousness technique, it occurs uh, where the writer is able to reveal the thoughts of the character. So the writer reveals the thought. So you could see what the characters are thinking per time. When that occurs, we refer to that as the stream of consciousness technique. And it occurs so much in writing. What you find the prose writer or the novelist doing is that he or she releases what is in the mind of the character. We call that the stream of consciousness technique. Number four, what we have as a narrative technique is called symbolism. 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 This occurs a lot in prose. What happens in this case is that is the writer uses symbols, right? Uses concrete ideas to pass across a message, right? In Invincible Man by Ralph Waldo Ellison, what you notice is that when the boys were prepped to go fight at Battle Royale, the black boys were worn white they were worn white blindfold. Why white? Right? So there's a message the author is trying to pass across by making the blindfold white and not another color. Right? So these are uh, matter. So we have imagery. We define the imagery as words that create mental pictures in the minds of the characters, right? They are words that create mental pictures in the minds of a characters. So these are what we refer to as the techniques of prose that the author uses in passing across his message. So we'll be looking at five in this video. I hope the video was able to bring you up to speed with regards to the dramatic techniques and narrative techniques that you should know.